Welcome to the Valley Hoops Insider podcast, part of the Valley Hoops Insider website. Harry Schrader with you today. And our guest is Jim Benson, our old friend from the Pantagraph there in Normal, Illinois. I guess technically Normal or technically Bloomington Normal. We'll get it all sorted out in just a minute. Longtime friend, great writer of Illinois State sports and has decided to ditch me and go into retirement. So I'm ticked off at him. I thought I'd drag him onto the podcast and give him a hard time. Jim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Harry. I got a lot of time now to do stuff like this, so we're good.
You were a long time on the Illinois beat and then a long time on the Illinois State beat. How long at both or each?
I was, for the Illinois beat, I was on there for 18 years, and then for Illinois State, 17 years, so almost equally split.
Wow. That's a good runs, man. A lot of guys don't get that anymore.
No, they don't.
It's really, before we talk about you and some of the other things, the newspaper business is really in a world of hurting, as we all know. They try to get subscribers, but the subscribers don't want to pay, and then they don't go to the site, so the advertisers don't want to advertise, and then manpower, everything is driven by human beings that can write stories, and that's a big cost thing. Talk just your thoughts about the newspaper business. You were able to retire on your own terms, but a lot of guys are not, and women are not being able to do that now.
Yeah, boy, and especially in the last, seems like 10 years, even the last 5 years, it's changed so rapidly. It's for an old newspaper guy, it's very disappointing. It's a tough business to get into now, and the people that are left shouldering the load of doing, the work that we used, 4 or 5 people used to do. It's a tough business. I was glad I was in it for almost 42 years. Like I say, the first 37 were pretty good. The last 5 have been really tough, and especially, since COVID, it's been really tough. Newsrooms are, all over the country are just, slashing their manpower and all that. And it's very sad to see.
Think about our friend Anthony Christensen there in Evansville. He was the Purple Aces beat writer. Now he's the beat writer for the Purple Aces and the Southern Indiana Screaming Eagles. He's got to cover 2 teams. It's just a really difficult, I would think anyway, job. Jim, after all those years writing, and man, your stuff is spectacular. I'm just a gigantic fan of your work. And of course, I like you a lot, so that probably colors what I'm reading. But tell us now, you're retired. What are you going to do with your time?
Well, I have 3 grandchildren, and they all live in St. Louis, so it's a pretty easy drive for my wife and I down there. So obviously spend a lot of time there. It's golf season right now. I need to get my handicap down, Harry. It's really suffered the last couple of years. I used to be a halfway decent player. Not pretty average. About a 13 handicap. Now I'm probably about 19 or 20. So I need to really work on that, and I intend to do that. And then just my wife and I are going to travel quite a bit, actually, just kind of enjoy life a little bit. And I don't want to miss out things that I've missed out on because of work, the last 40 plus years, weddings, birthday parties, kind of et cetera. And actually, it's going to be kind of nice going to a game and not having to take notes or take video or,
Sure.
Just actually sit there and enjoy it. Maybe have a beer in the stands, too, with, some friends and all that. So I'm looking forward to that part of it.
I used to cover Cardinal baseball, but 60, 70 games a year and interviewing players after the games and those kind of things. And then my family would say, well, let's go to a game. And I'm like, I don't want to go watch those guys again. And I would, but the whole time I'm thinking, well, after the game, I got to do like, I couldn't shift gears very easily. It took me a while.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's hard. And we have a Division III program in town, Illinois Wesleyan, and they're very good in athletics. I used to cover their football team, but I haven't seen a basketball game of theirs since I took over the Illinois State beat because, I just don't have time. And I know the coach over there really well. He actually used to work with my wife teaching at Normal Community High School here in Bloomington Normal, and he's a great guy. Ron Rose is his name, a great guy, and I want to go to some of his games too. So it would kind of afford me a chance to do stuff like that.
You talked about the grandkids here in St. Louis. He said he's coming to St. Louis quite a bit. I haven't got a phone call. He hasn't dropped in on seeing me, but I thought we were friends. We'll move along. What do you think you will miss most about the beat, covering the teams, and those kind of things?
I'm going to miss talking to the coaches. And I'm talking to high school coaches too, just the coaches, just especially around Bloomington Normal, our city coaches. They're kind of people like me almost who have stayed in the same spot for a long time, a lot of them and all that. I'm really going to miss that. I'm really going to miss, and on the college side, I think Illinois State's going to do some good stuff here in the next couple of years. And I think they got the right guy in control. And I really enjoyed my year spending with him, and Rob Judson's part of his staff, Ryan Peden's staff. So I'm going to miss those guys. I just kind of like the you always hear coaches talk about they like the practices. Well, I kind of like just kind of the interaction with coaches and just talking about stuff, even not related to basketball, just about life too. I'm going to kind of miss a lot of that stuff.
I'm with you about Ryan Peden, though. I think he's going to do a good job there. I'm writing a piece right now that will include them. I'm doing kind of Valley breakdowns, 3 teams at a time, and working on the Redbirds right now, and they've got some nice pieces coming in. Long time there at Illinois State, the last 17 years, as you mentioned. I want to take you down memory lane a little bit and talk highlights and those kinds of things. So I want to ask you kind of questions a little bit different, maybe a little bit differently. There might be players you loved watch playing, and then there might be players you loved talking to or loved their story. So I want to differentiate those things, and they could be the same guy. But who's a player over the last 17 plus years at Illinois State that you said, man, I loved watching him play?
Oh, the top of the list is Osiris Eldridge. He was spectacular. And I was thinking about him the other day. He would be a guy now where, you'd be afraid of. After his first or second year, he'd be, going to the Big 10 or the Big 12 or something like that. But he was just a spectacular player. He could, obviously hit deep threes, and he could take it to the hoop. I kind of remember the thing I remember about him is senior year, the first game they played at SIU Edwardsville. That was the first game of the season. He got the tap and just went down and just hammered. The first basket of the year was just a hammer dunk and all that. I mean, he could just do it all. He was the most complete player that I covered at Illinois State in my time. He was really fun, and I like talking to him too. He kind of he was a kid from Chicago. He just had a kind of a dry sense of humor and stuff like that. So I could share some things probably now, but I probably shouldn't share a couple of the things. But he was just he was a fun guy, and I remember the first year, that was the year Osiris says after his first year, Porter Moser got fired. And Osiris put his name in, to possibly transfer and all that, and he didn't. And I remember talking to him about it after he decided to stay at Illinois State, and he had 3 years left. And I said, I think you got a chance to be a, 2-time MVP. He walks away, and then he kind of turns around, looks at me, and goes, 3-time. Osiris was not lacking in confidence. That's I tell you what. But he was a lot of fun to be around. And player wise, he was by far the best player I think I've covered at Illinois State. I'm not sure who's next in the conversation. He was pretty spectacular.
You think about him and some of those teams he was on, and some of the teams that had some great success late in Dan Muller's time and Tim Jankovich's time. There were some really good teams. Do you ever classify teams like that, like this era or that particular season? Do you remember them like that? I don't have the gray matter to put all that together, but some guys do.
Yeah, I kind of do, and especially since I kind of covered 3 different coaches at Illinois State, so I kind of group it that way. Obviously, Porter that was my first year. I just had him for 1 year and all that, but I'll tell you what, that year with Porter, I just got to know him really well, and then when he came back in the league, I got to really talk to him a lot, and he's just a great person. He really is. What you see is what you get with Porter. That's just the way he is. And I love talking to Porter. I loved going into his office and talking, and, you got to be neutral in this business. But when he got fired, I felt really bad for him. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to Porter, really, going down with Rick Majerus and kind of resurrecting himself and learning a couple things. But I kind of missed that. But like I say, I just kind of group it as the 3 coaches is kind of what I think about when I think about covering Illinois State. And obviously Tim Jankovic he was great. Him and I were basically the same age and all that. Jim was a journalism major when he was at K State, so he would always ask me about the journalism business and all that, and we had a lot of talks. It seemed like I'd go in there and I'd be in there an hour. And we talked about 5 minutes about the game coming up, and then we talk about other things. So I really enjoyed my time with Tim. And then with Dan, Dan and I got along. We probably got along better at the end of his tenure than we did at the beginning. We had a couple rough spots, but that's to be expected in this business. And actually, Dan and I belong to the same church here in Bloomington, so I see him from time to time there, and he's doing well and all that. And I'm not sure. I don't think he wants to get back into coaching. It's even from he's only been gone a year, but wow, it seems like it's changed so much in just this year and all that.
I had he and Greg Lansing on a podcast just a couple of weeks ago. He didn't sound like he wanted to get back into coaching.
Oh, did he?
Either.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't seen him in a while. So yeah, I can't blame him. I mean, if you better have your heart into it, or nowadays you just get swallowed up.
Yeah, that's wow. You're right. It has changed dramatically. I want to ask you. You mentioned Osiris as somebody to talk to. When you're a beat writer like you are, and you get to know those players, you're there every day, or routinely. I maybe not every day, but routinely, you're with the team and talking to players at practice, during, after games, those kinds of things, and then you can develop a relationship with them. I would think that would create dilemmas in terms of writing the story when the team isn't playing well.
Yeah. I've never had a problem with that, to be honest with you. I can see where some people might think that, but I never did. And I was just not the kind of guy. And I know some Illinois State fans, because I got not hate mail, but but bad mail, and they thought I should be more critical of the team and all that. But I never saw my job as the beat writer as giving my opinions about stuff. I mean. I just kind of wanted to lay it out there for people and let them judge for themselves. I think that's more a columnist's job. That's just kind of maybe the era I grew up in.
Sure.
The beat writer is kind of supposed to be kind of neutral and all that. Obviously, people watch these guys on ESPN spouting their views left and right about stuff like that, and that's not what I see as a beat writer. I see as a beat writer, just kind of telling the facts and kind of letting you decide, and a lot of people didn't like that, and because especially the younger, viewers, because they're used to, watching ESPN and Stephen A. Smith, blabbering about something and, giving his, like he knows it all. I don't know it all about basketball. Heck, I never played high school basketball or anything like that. So I didn't pretend that I'm, I was all knowing and all that. I let you, make your decision. But I, like the beat writer, I just thought, my job was to go out there, cover the game, tell you what the people who participated in it and the coaches thought about it. And, and ask the questions, you have to ask the questions, what the fan in the stands thinking, why did you take a timeout here? Why didn't you take a timeout? Why did you let this guy have the last shot, instead of this guy? And you have to ask those questions, and that's, normal. But I just wasn't a guy who was going to try to crash and burn people. And actually, when I decided to retire, I got a note from a ISU player who's leaving who's in the portal right now. And he told me he thanked me for not really burning him.
Wow.
For especially the bad year he was having.
Wow.
And I appreciated that,
No doubt.
That's just kind of was my view of it. And, some people don't have that view, but I don't know. I'm old school.
I'm going to throw you into a weird situation here. So let's think of that about Alabama last year. They had that player that got involved with carrying a gun somewhere, and his friend used it and shot somebody else. And they never really suspended him, never really disciplined him. He wins the Player of the Year award, all those kinds of things. Recently, one of their recruits who hasn't signed yet, but is committed, he got arrested and had guns in his car. And coach comes out and says, well, we're not recruiting him anymore. I'm like, at some point, somebody's got to write a story saying, dude, which is it? And
yeah.
and I would assume a beat writer would have to deal with that in some way. But wow, such a ticklish situation. Because I'm with you. I think the beat writer's job is to reflect, not to pontificate.
Yes.
And so now but now the story is, our best player was that guy, and now the new guy is that guy is the same guy, but you're saying, oh, we don't want those kind of guys around.
Yeah.
That puts the writer in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, but you just ask the question. You just ask the question, and you let the coach explain it, and that, to me, that'd be the end of the story. Then I'm not going to sit there and tell him what he do or if he's a hypocrite or not. But that's just the way. And I'll tell you, I mean, Illinois State this year, they had an assistant coach who wasn't there the whole season. He left before the season, and people are telling me to go get the story and all that. Well, you ask the people this we're not talking about it. Well, how do you pry something out of somebody? Nobody's talking about it. Nobody. So I'm not gonna sit there beating my head up and bashing the coach for not saying anything and all that. It's just and you just put in there they're not commenting on it. I don't know. That's the way I am. But I'm like you though. In a situation like that other one, you just ask the question. You always got to ask the question.
Yeah, those can be dangerous questions.
Yeah, they can be tough sometimes. You're right.
You were in the Big Ten all those years, and obviously in the Valley these last X amount of years. Compare, contrast. Obviously, the Big Ten's big money, big everything. I mean, everything's different. But compare and contrast maybe the personality of those two leagues.
Yeah, what I always tell people, it was kind of funny. I covered Illinois for 18 years, and you just felt like you're just kind of one of the hundreds of faces in the crowd, kind of like you're in a high school graduating class of 300. But when you're covering the Valley, you kind of feel like you're in a class of about 50. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's so much more. I mean, the coach at Penn State wouldn't have never known my name for anything, but the coach at Drake is going to know the basketball coach at Drake is going to know who I am and all that. And it was just a lot easier to develop relationships, even with other coaches, besides the one that you covered yourself in the Valley, than the Big Ten. Like I say, the Big Ten. Even when I last covered in 2006, I mean, there was a lot. Well, maybe there's fewer people now because there's not as many newspapers. Because Illinois, I'm telling you, Illinois had like 12 newspapers covering them when I was covering them, and I
more
think it's probably down.
YouTubers and podcasters though.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. They have more people who are doing the social media side of it, a lot of it. But yeah, so you can just develop so much closer relationships, and not only with the coaches, but like the Valley staff. And I mean, the Big Ten staff didn't know who I was, but the Valley staff obviously did know, and what great people they are. I mean, that's one of the things that I enjoyed so much covering Illinois State, was dealing with guys like Mike Kern, Doug Elgin, Jack Watkins, just really great people. And I'm gonna miss that part. I really am. I'm gonna miss that part of it.
Quality guys, those guys. Of course, Doug has been gone now a couple of years, but and replaced by Jeff Jackson. But yeah, super quality guys. Jeff is as well. I've been able to spend some time with him and getting to know him more. Obviously, when you're a long time with a guy like Doug, you just feel like you know him, and
Right.
Getting to know Jeff and really enjoying that. In your time of being a beat writer at Illinois State, I would imagine also you had opportunities to do some things that were national in scope. What I mean is Illinois is playing at a big high-level game, or Illinois State went to the semifinals or whatever it was of the NIT. Are there things like that are beyond just day in and day out that are big memories to you?
Yeah, the biggest memory was the game that didn't happen for me, and that was
the game.
Yeah, right. In 2017, when Illinois State got kind of snubbed for the NCAA, and they're in the NIT, and they win their first game, and now they just got to beat Central Florida at home, and now they're hosting the University of Illinois. I mean, a game that is never going to be played in Bloomington Normal under any usual circumstances. And this one was going to be played in Bloomington Normal, and I'm telling you, that place would have been filled to the rafters because these Redbird fans wanted to play Illinois so bad. And Illinois State lost by a point to Central Florida, and that was really a disappointment, because that was going to be a spectacular game. It was going to be a spectacular atmosphere. I mean, there were some great atmospheres at Redbird Arena when I covered the Redbirds, but that one would have just been off the charts, and that's too bad that didn't happen. That would have been fun.
Yeah, I was up there for that Central Florida game, and really a game they should have won, and had it won really, and kind of lost it at the end. And it was electric that night. And I was like, the whole time I'm like, man, if this happens, I am absolutely coming back. This is just spectacular.
Yeah, that would have been so much fun, and I don't think it'd have been a lot of fun for Illinois because it was a game, they had nothing to gain and everything to lose, but it would have been fun for the fans. That would have been a treat. But like I say, it's never going to happen unless they get matched up in NIT again in the future, and it would happen to be at Illinois State because the Illini are not coming to Redbird Arena. Or SEPQ Arena. I'm sorry, SEPQ Arena.
That's right. I do have a bone to pick with you about retiring when you did. By leaving when you did, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but you made Wyatt Wheeler the dean of the beat writers of the Missouri Valley Conference. I mean, do you feel any guilt or remorse over that?
Oh yeah, I feel a lot of remorse about that, Harry. But I'm saying it's Paul Oren because him and Wyatt kind of came into the league at the same time, and obviously Paul's not with the newspaper anymore, but he's the Valpo beat guy. So
that's true.
And if I tell you what though, I think they need to have a wrestling match to decide who's the dean of the Valley's kind of sports writers now. And I'm not sure who I'd take. Paul's obviously a bigger guy than Wyatt, but those scrappy little guys, I mean, they could be tough to beat in a wrestling match. So yeah. But at the Valley thing next year, you can have that. You can be the referee and just kind of let them decide.
Wyatt does a great job, obviously, in Springfield with the Missouri State Bears and all that goes on in that community, in that area, and we're big fans of his. So when it's all wrapped up, and meaning this part of your career and whatnot, are there things that not that you wish you had done differently, but when you made certain career choices, what do you look back and go, man, I just scored. I did that and it turned out great.
Well, that's a good question. Wow, nobody's asked me that one. I'm not sure how to answer that. Boy, you stumped me, Harry. You got me speechless. I'm not really sure. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I have no regrets, really, though. I mean,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't. And like I told somebody else earlier today when I was talking to somebody else, I mean, this was more the Illinois kind of side of it was my high profile beats, but I covered high school for 40 years too. And I enjoyed the hell out of that, to be honest with you. And the people I've met in the high school, especially in Bloomington Normal here are really great people. And I'm really going to miss that part of it. Our Central Catholic High School in Bloomington got second in the state. And I covered that a month ago, and their coach is just a great guy, and I'm going to consider him a friend for life. And there are so many guys like him like that, and I'm really going to kind of miss that part of it.
Yeah, I used to announce a ton of high school football and basketball and all that as well. And that high school world is so much fun. And and I would schedule the games. I would decide who we would go and cover. We were just all over the St. Louis area, and we would, of course, book the high profile games and like that. But we on purpose picked sometimes small schools that just had a little rivalry, and maybe their records weren't even that good. And people would say, "Why are you doing that game?" And I said, "Well, those guys work hard in August too. They deserve a little, whatever. And those coaches are working hard." And I just think it's valuable to give time and space to recognize all those different people.
Yeah, and probably back to one of your question, if I would do anything differently, and I don't think I would. And one of the reasons I say that is because kind of my last week of my job, some coach just kind of reached out to me, and she sent me an email, and she said, sometimes your job, all you hear is the bad and negative, but I want you to know that what you did really meant a lot to people, and somebody, you doing a story on somebody, they'll carry that memory the rest of their life. And wow, that kind of blew me away, actually. And we're not doing this for money, that's for sure. And but that's the reason I got into journalism. That's the whole reason I got into journalism the whole time is not to make a lot of money, but just to kind of maybe make a lot of memories and all that. And when she said that to me, that kind of hit me right between the eyes. I'll tell you that. It made me feel good about what I did the last almost 42 years.
Somewhere in a trunk in my basement is a picture of me when I was a high school basketball player. Myself and another guy had collided. We're laying on the ground, and they said, his name wasn't Jim Benson, but they said, Jim Benson and an unidentified player. That's my claim to fame. I was an
That's it.
unidentified player. But I still have that picture. I was in the papes.
Right. That's exactly right. So yeah, just kind of doing stuff like that. My wife told me once that she said, the story you do is somebody's Super Bowl. And
Yep.
she was totally right about that.
Totally.
Maybe the most minuscule thing you think you were doing, and maybe something you didn't want to go out and do or didn't know much about, it meant something to somebody. And I always try to put my best effort into it.
So no chance of you coming out of retirement. No chance. Will you be at Arch Madness even maybe next spring?
To be decided.
Okay.
If I am, I'll be in the stands. I won't be down in the press room. Not that I don't like you guys, but I just won't. I just gotta. You can meet me at Maggie's or whatever that place is called.
Okay.
And we can have a drink there or something like that. But I just kind of want to separate my, go kind of cold turkey, I guess, a little bit. And
there you go.
Because I'm a little. I don't want to say I'm burned out on it, but I felt like I gave it all I had for 42 years, and there's no more to give.
I got nothing in the tank.
Jim, that's about it.
Listen, I'm so excited for you and for what's in front of you. Like obviously you love your family and care about those kids and grandkids and your wife and just wanting to be able to spend time with them. That's just spectacular.
Well, thanks, Harry, and I really enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know all the guys around the valley and the guys who aren't with us anymore. Paul Sullentrop, obviously Steve Pivovar, unfortunately, has passed away, but just getting to know guys like that all through the years, I really enjoyed it. And I always enjoyed going to the Valley tournament. It was kind of nice when everybody all got together and all that. It was kind of cool just sitting down in that press room and all of us just talking and all that. That's going to be some of my favorite memories of, maybe more so than the games.
I'm telling you, relationship means everything, right? The relationship with people. And that's what you're getting to major on completely in retirement. Jim Benson, just spectacular rider, better person. Appreciate your time today being a part of our podcast.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
That's Jim Benson. You've been watching this podcast right here on valleyhoopsinsider.com. Remember, since you've been there, make it a better place. We'll see you again real soon.